Hey everyone, it's Adam Tracy, and I wanted to make a quick series about the best binary options licenses for 2024. And it's July, so I'm obviously a little behind. But we're going to do three in no particular order. And today I wanted to talk about Vanuatu. And Vanuatu has always been huge for Forex because the financial dealer's license is a relatively inexpensive and relatively easy license to obtain. And under that umbrella, which I've spoken about in different videos, the financial dealer's license being very broad to like encompass securities, a whole gamut of things. It also includes binary options, but in my experience, binary options, at least when you detail in the application, the business plan, everything that goes with it, that you're going to engage in binary options brokerage, it tends to be a little more difficult, right? Because binary options tend to, rather unfairly, have a negative connotation, and that's largely because there's so many unlicensed players, which isn't necessarily the worst thing in the industry. And there's a lot of scams around it, and people lose their ass on them, right? And because they're just highly speculative, right? And to the extent that you're not aware, like a binary option is basically just this bet, right? And you've got high-low, like whether either a stock, a currency, a commodity is going to go above or below a certain price over some specified period of time. There's like range binary options, which it'll stay within a particular range, price range for a given period of time. One touch, which means over this term, it'll hit this price, whether it stays there or not. And then there's these 60-second bets, which are like crazy, right? Like what some stock commodity is going to do literally within 60 seconds. Your expiry is 60 seconds. In any event, and despite what people say, it's actually legal in the United States. It's just hard to get the license, right? And you don't see a lot of Forex brokers in the United States, to be honest with you. And this sort of falls under that in terms of the US, but that's a whole other story for another time. So the financial dealer's license in Vanuatu, pretty streamlined, common application type stuff, business plan, AML, KYC for the UBOs, CVs, which it's not so much, in my experience, like a real qualification in terms of, can you run a brokerage? It's just whether you have like the financial austerity and like the fiduciary capacity to not like run off with people's money. Also, basic like local director. There's a local office requirement in terms of economic substance, very minimal, right? And it doesn't grow exponentially with the size of operations. So I've talked about Belize, like basically losing its status as a real bona fide offshore jurisdiction because of the economic substance requirements, making you like having to increase your office size and the number of employees you have based on like revenues and stuff like that, which, in places, offshore jurisdictions, whether it's Vanuatu, anywhere, even like the Bahamas, it gets hard to find bigger space, right? Like it's just not there. It's not like downtown, it's not midtown Manhattan, right? Like it's just not that. So you don't have to like exponentially grow, but you need a local office, which is basically like housing a BPO. You're talking less than $500 a month, and some nominal employee, of which you can find a lot of expats. And typically I recommend, at least at the beginning, just get some admin level person to answer chat or do whatever. So that's sort of the long and short of it. Capital requirement about 50,000 US, takes with like lead up time about 3-4 months. Like I said, you can expect more regulatory like intervention for a binary options broker than you would with Forex in Vanuatu, only because of the perceived risk. Like there's very, very stringent requirements about not allowing US players, or even like, you basically have to geofence it, and you have to prove that you can adequately keep US persons from hopping on the platform. But other than that, like it's very broad, like there's really no restrictions where you, in terms of the types of binary options you can offer or the underlying asset that you're doing on. You can even do it on crypto, right? Things like that, which in a lot of other jurisdictions that I'll talk about later, particularly ones in the EU, they actually limit you in terms of not only the nature of the options, so like 60-second binaries aren't allowed in most places, but also the types of assets that you're allowed to write, or customers are allowed to effectively write these options upon, right? So Vanuatu, very open. Then obviously the most important part that I always sort of, I guess, like over concentrate on is like payments, right? And banking. The local banking scene isn't obviously huge. There's international banks and the like, but it's not a big offshore banking scene. You don't have to bank there. But there are banks that will cater to you because you're licensed there. And from a practical standpoint, is it the best option? No, right? And like you'll find banks in the EU, in other parts of Asia, in various offshore jurisdictions that will take the business from a Vanuatu licensed financial dealer. So I usually predicate that decision in part on where you are, like where you're going to operate from, right? Because sometimes the timing gets, troublesome. Like, right, like in Los Angeles, I don't even know, like 11 hours behind or at, so just like getting that interconnectivity, and it's not the most robust, like front end facing banking platform. So usually you want to like kind of key it up based on where you are. And then in terms of the payment rails, there's a lot of different options, like, for cards, SEPA, SWIFT, IBAN, Union Pay, which is going to be huge in Vanuatu. It's usually sort of a hodgepodge of different EMIs that will offer that. Most are high risk, most are rather expensive in terms of like your interchange fees and the like, but you really don't have a choice, right? And then obviously there isn't an issue with onboarding, like taking deposits in crypto, whereas in some jurisdictions it requires like some kind of VASP or crypto type license to like accept crypto deposits and then allow for cash trading. So that is Vanuatu financial dealer license for binaries in a nutshell. Any questions, definitely hit me up, Adam at adamtracy.io. Talk to you next time. Cheers.